Is going on, everybody? And welcome to the Young Brother of Soul podcast show. And guess what? Yeah, you already know who it is. It's your guy, the Young Brother of Soul. First and foremost, thank you. It's like, no, let me stop. I want to thank everybody that has been supporting me throughout my podcast. And not only that, it means a lot. It definitely means a lot. And also, what I want to say is, trust and believe, the Young Brother of Soul did not forget about the ones that definitely want to be interviewed on the Young Brother of Soul podcast show. My family definitely did not forget about y'all. And my friends definitely did not forget about y'all. But trust and believe, y'all definitely going to be on the Young Brother Soul podcast show. Just got to figure out when. Yeah, that's all. So, it is Super Bowl weekend. Now, if you remember, the last episode I did, it was NFL great teams that never won a Super Bowl, meaning by the year or the season. Trust and believe. There are a lot of great NFL teams by season, or as I should say, by yearly, that were great during regular season, but they always lose when it comes to the divisional round, the conference championship, even the Super Bowl, which really hurts. Yeah. But like I said, this is Super Bowl weekend. And guess what? On today's episode, what I'm going to be talking about is great. Should I say great? Yeah. Nah, I'm not going to say great. NFL coaches that never won a Super Bowl. Now, believe it or not, there were a lot of great NFL coaches that never won a Super Bowl as a head coach. Now, believe it or not, some of these head coaches that never won actually won Super Bowls as players, or they won Super Bowls as assistant coaches, offensive coordinators, defensive coordinators, well, position coaches. But for some reason, they could not win the big one as a head coach. Why? Maybe it's because they didn't have, the right players, or maybe because they wasn't calling the right plays. Well, believe it or not, these coaches that never won a Super Bowl had some wonderful records regular season, but some of them have never appeared in the Super Bowl. And not only that they never appeared in the Super Bowl, some of their postseason records wasn't always that great. Now, leave a comment if you feel as though that I'm leaving some of these coaches that never won a Super Bowl. Well, I got to start off the list first. So, starting off on the list as an NFL coach that never won a Super Bowl, Dennis Green. Now, Dennis Green was actually a wonderful, wonderful head coach. Now, believe it or not, he actually did win a Super Bowl, but he was an assistant coach with the San Francisco 49ers. But later on, he did become the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, and then a few years later, he became the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. Well, believe it or not, Dennis Green actually had 113 wins with 94 losses. And not only that, he also had a 4-8 record in the postseason. Yeah, he did. Yeah. He was the head coach that coached the 1998 Minnesota Vikings with that 15-1 record. Now, we already know what happened with that NFC Championship. They lost to the Atlanta Falcons at home. It was a lot of, it's a lot of moments that should have been redone And that team right there, ladies and gentlemen, they were the best team in the league. Well, like I said, they lost the NFC Championship to the Atlanta Falcons. Yeah. 2 years later, he would definitely coach the Vikings again to the NFC Championship, but they were blown out by the New York Giants 41-0. I mean, yeah, y'all made it back to the NFC Championship, but y'all got blown out. Lord have mercy. What happened in that game? Y'all didn't even score a touchdown. Well, Dennis Green would definitely be fired during the season of 2001. Then later on, he would become the head coach of the Arizona Cardinals. Well, believe it or not, he didn't actually make it to the playoffs with the Cardinals, but Dennis Green is definitely a great NFL quarterback to never win a Super Bowl. Yeah. Another great coach in the NFL that never won a Super Bowl, Don Coryell, a.k.a. Air Coryell. Now, Don Coryell was the head coach of the St. Louis Football Cardinals, and then he is actually known as the San Diego Chargers head coach. He had 114 regular wins, 89 losses, and 1 tie, and he was actually 3-6 in the postseason. Well, he is definitely one of a head coach that never appeared in a Super Bowl. He did coach the San Diego Chargers to the 1980 and the 1981 AFC Championship. But, like I said, he didn't appear in the Super Bowl. He definitely was a great coach because he had players like Dan Fouts and Kellen Winslow. Well, they fell short back-to-back AFC Championship. Now, did he deserve to win the Super Bowl? Definitely. He was a great coach. So was Dennis Green. Back to Dennis Green, he also had Randy Moss, Chris Carter, Randall Cunningham, and Dante Culpepper. So, yeah. Another great coach that never won a Super Bowl, Chuck Knox. Now, believe it or not, Chuck Knox was actually the head coach of the LA Rams, Buffalo Bills, Seattle Seahawks, and back to the LA Rams. He had 186 regular wins, 146 losses, 47 losses, and believe it or not, he was actually 7-11 in the postseason. Now, Chuck Knox is definitely another great coach to never appeared in a Super Bowl as a head coach. All those teams that he played, they definitely were playoff teams, but they didn't reach the big one. Now, for some reason, Chuck Knox was a heck of a coach, offensively and defensively. Well, teams didn't make it to the Super Bowl with Chuck Knox. Definitely was a great head coach. Another great head coach to never win a Super Bowl, George Allen. George Allen was a phenomenal head coach. And not only that he was a phenomenal head coach, he was the head coach of the LA Rams and the Washington Redskins. He actually had 116 regular wins, 47 losses, and 5 ties, draws. That's what they do in the NFL. He was the head coach of the Fearsome Foursome, which defense was phenomenal. Deacon Jones, Roosevelt Greer, Merlin Olsen, and that decent defense did not win it all. He was also the head coach of the 1972 Washington Redskins, which appeared in Super Bowl VII. Well, they would eventually lose to the 17-0 Miami Dolphins in that Super Bowl. Now, George Allen definitely was a phenomenal head coach. And not only that he was phenomenal with offense, he was also phenomenal with defense. He only appeared in one Super Bowl, which he lost, and that was the last time that they won. The last time he ever appeared in a Super Bowl, which was his only time that he appeared in a Super Bowl. Yeah. His postseason record was also 2-7, so that explains it a lot too. Yeah. Another great NFL coach that never won a Super Bowl is Marty Schottenheimer. Now, Marty Schottenheimer definitely was a great NFL coach. And believe it or not, he had some heck of a football teams. He was the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, Kansas City Chiefs, Washington Redskins, and San Diego Chargers. He had 200 regular wins, 126 losses, and 1 tie. Well, his postseason record was 5-13. And believe it or not, he was the head coach of the 1986 and the 1987 Cleveland Browns. Well, we already know what happened with those teams. The drive, the fumble, back-to-back AFC Championship appearance, which they both lost. He was also a head coach of the 1995 and the 1997 Kansas City Chiefs. They were 13-3 with the number 1 seed. Well, they lost at home. 1 to the Colts and 1 to the Broncos. And believe it or not, he was only the Redskins head coach for 1 season. Then he would go on to become the San Diego Chargers head coach. And believe it or not, his last year as the San Diego Chargers head coach, they went 14-2. Well, they lost the divisional round to the New England Patriots. And believe it or not, they actually fired him after that. I mean, he had a 14-2 record season. Took them to the playoffs. Well, believe it or not, Marty Schottenheimer definitely was one of the head coaches on this list that never appeared in a Super Bowl. And not only that, he was a great NFL coach that never won a Super Bowl. So shout out to Marty Schottenheimer, who definitely was a great head coach. Another great head coach to never win a Super Bowl is Jeff Fisher. Now, Jeff Fisher, he actually did win a Super Bowl as a player. He played with the 85 Chicago Bears as a defensive back, which he won a Super Bowl. Well, later on, he would become, well, as I should say, he is the only head coach that I ever seen or ever known that became a coach that was on teams that relocated. 2 teams. The Houston Oilers, then they became the Tennessee Titans. Then he was the head coach of the St. Louis Rams, and then they would become the LA Rams. Yeah, he's the only head coach that I know that been on 2 teams that relocated. Yeah, he definitely was. I remember on Hard Knocks, he said, I've been through a relocation. I'm not trying to go through it again. Well, actually, he did. So, yeah. Believe it or not, Jeff Fisher had 173 regular wins, 165 regular losses with 1 tie. But in the postseason, he was 5-6. And not only that, in the postseason that he was 5-6, he would coach the Tennessee Titans to Super Bowl 34. Well, they would eventually lose to the St. Louis Rams because they came up 1 yard short. 1 yard short from tying the Super Bowl. What if they would have never came up 1 yard short? That definitely, ladies and gentlemen, would have been the first Super Bowl to ever go to overtime. Well, we already know what Super Bowls went to overtime. We'll talk about that another time. Yeah, Jeff Fisher definitely was a great head coach, but he didn't win it all. So he appeared in the Super Bowl, but didn't win it all. Yeah. Another great head coach to never win a Super Bowl is Dan Reeves. Dan Reeves definitely was a great head coach. And not only that, well, before he became a head coach, he actually won 2 Super Bowls with the Dallas Cowgirls. Yeah, I said it. He won Super Bowl 6 as a running back, and he won Super Bowl 12 as an assistant head coach. Well, later on in life, he definitely would get a chance to become a head coach in the NFL. Well, he became the head coach of the Denver Broncos, the New York Giants, and the Atlanta Falcons. Now, believe it or not, Dan Reeves actually had 190 regular season wins, 165 losses, and 2 ties. And he also had an 11-9 record in the postseason. Well, like I said, Dan Reeves definitely was a great head coach. He had players like John Elway and Jamal Anderson with the Atlanta Falcons. Well, Dan Reeves is one of the great NFL head coaches that will appear in 4 Super Bowls and lose all 4 of them. He lost 3 with the Broncos and 1 with the Falcons. He lost Super Bowl 21 against the New York Giants. And then he would lose Super Bowl 22 against the Washington Redskins. Then he would lose Super Bowl 24 against the San Francisco 49ers. Well, he would lose another Super Bowl. He would lose Super Bowl 33 against the Denver Broncos with the Atlanta Falcons. Now, he won 2 Super Bowls, well, one as a player and one as an assistant coach, but he didn't win one as an NFL head coach. Like I said, he is one of NFL coaches that been to 4 Super Bowls and lost all 4 of them. Yeah. Dan Reeves definitely was a great head coach, but didn't win it all. Did not win it all. Another great NFL coach that did not win the Super Bowl is Bud Grant. Now, before I go on with Bud Grant actually used to coach in the Canadian League before he came into the NFL. And he would coach the Winnipeg Bombers. And he won 4 Grey Cups. Believe it or not, 4 Grey Cups. Grey Cups, that's the Super Bowl and Canadian Football League. Yeah, he won 4. Well, he became the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings. And believe it or not, he actually had 158 regular wins, 96 losses, and 5 ties, draws. So you know what I'm saying. And believe it or not, he definitely is another. Well, how should I say? There are 3 head coaches in the NFL that have been to 4 Super Bowls and lost 4 of them. Okay? Like I said, Dan Reeves and Bud Grant definitely was another head coach that been to 4 Super Bowls and lost all 4 of them. Yeah. For some reason, he coached the Minnesota Vikings in the regular season. They did well. But when it comes to the Super Bowl, they find a way to choke. And not only that they choked, they got blown out. They got blown out in Super Bowl 4 against the Chiefs, 23-7. Then they would get blown out by the Dolphins in Super Bowl 8, 24-7. Then they would lose to the Pittsburgh Steelers in Super Bowl 9, 16-6. Then they would lose to the Oakland Raiders in Super Bowl 11, 32-14. And the crazy thing about it is the Super Bowls that the Vikings played in, for some reason, in the first half, they couldn't score, but they only scored in the second half. Well, it was already too late. And not only that, Bud Grant had 11 wins in the postseason and 8 losses. Well, we already know what those 4 losses were. 4 Super Bowls. Whew, man, Bud Grant. He won 4 Grey Cups, but he couldn't win 4 Super Bowls. Can you imagine if he would have never left the Canadian League? Oh, he probably would have won more Grey Cups. But for some reason, he could not win the big one in the NFL. Maybe he was meant to be a head coach in the Canadian League. Who knows? But he definitely was a great coach to never win a Super Bowl, and he is the second out of 30 coaches that been to 4 Super Bowls and lost all 4 of them. And not only that, I believe that he made it to at least 2 or 3 NFC championships. So, yeah, you get what I'm saying. Yeah. Then, of course, they lost the 1975 playoff game against the Dallas Cowgirls, the Hail Mary from Roger Staubach to Drew Pearson. So, yeah. Another great coach in the NFL to never win it all, as I should say, number one on the list. Marv Levy. Oh boy, Marv Levy. Now, Marv Levy is definitely the third head coach. Well, put it this way. He was also a head coach in the Canadian League, and he won 2 Grey Cups. 2 Grey Cups. Well, later on, he would definitely get a chance to coach in the NFL. He was the head coach of the Kansas City Chiefs and the Buffalo Bills. Now, believe it or not, he had 193 regular wins and 112 losses. But he will have an 11-8 postseason record. Marv Levy. He coached the Buffalo Bills to 5 AFC championships, but he is really known for coaching the Bills to 4 straight Super Bowls and lost all 4 of them. Yeah, Marv, oh man. You coach a team to go to 4 straight Super Bowls and you lost all 4 of them. Oh man, the one that really hurt them was Super Bowl 25. I mean, if the kicker would have never missed, Scott Norwood, if he would have never missed that field goal, we definitely would have been talking about a different team of the Buffalo Bills. Yeah. I think if they would have at least won one Super Bowl of those 4 straight Super Bowls that they went to, we would have been talking about a whole different situation. Well, we already know what happened. He missed the field goal. Then the next year, I think I mentioned this before in a couple episodes. Well, I'm going to keep on mentioning it. I don't care. The next year, their star running back, Thurman Thomas, loses his helmet in the Super Bowl. Then they would go on and lose to the Buffalo. Oh, excuse me. No, they would not go and lose to Buffalo. They would lose to the Washington Redskins. And then the next 2 Super Bowls, they got blown out by the Dallas Cowgirls. What was the Super Bowl 27, 52-17, and Super Bowl 28, 30-13. And believe it or not, that was the last time that Marv Levy made it to the Super Bowl, which was Super Bowl 28. Now, he definitely was a great head coach to never win it all. Like I said, he'd been to 4 straight Super Bowls. He had 4 chances, man. Like Dan Reeves, Bud Grant, Marv Levy. Y'all had 4 chances to at least win 1 or 2 Super Bowls, and then you would have had nothing to worry about. Well, yeah. I mean, yeah, you made 4 appearances, but that will always and forever be a hurtful thing when you lose all those Super Bowls. I mean, yeah, losing a Super Bowl is definitely a hurtful feeling. I mean, I seen my hometown team, Philadelphia Eagles, I seen them win 2 Super Bowls and lost 2. Yeah, they are some very hurtful feelings. And believe it or not, like I said, sometimes when you have a good coach, sometimes it could be the players, or sometimes it could be the play calling. It definitely could be the defensive calling too, and special teams. It goes all over. Believe it or not. Yeah, believe it or not, it goes all over. Now, those are your great NFL head coaches to never win a Super Bowl. Now, before we go off, I want to do some honorable mentions. Honorable mentions of NFL head coaches that did not win the Super Bowl. Starting off with the honorable mention list is Sam White, who was the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals. Well, he would lose Super Bowl 23 to the San Francisco 49ers, who done a 90-yard drive down and scored a touchdown. Sam White definitely was a great head coach. Another honorable mention head coach to never win a Super Bowl is John Fox. Now, believe it or not, John Fox was the head coach of the 2003 Carolina Panthers, who he coached them so good that they would go on to play in Super Bowl 38. Well, they would go on and lose to the New England Patriots by a field goal. points. That was actually a good Super Bowl, believe it or not. I believe the score was, 32-29? Yeah, Adam Vinatieri. He will also be the head coach of the 2013 Denver Broncos. Well, I think we already know what happened with that team. Yeah. They got blown out in the Super Bowl by the Seattle Seahawks, 43-8. I never seen a Super Bowl so blown out. Well, actually I did, but that was a that was a blowout. He will also become the head coach of the Chicago Bears, but he didn't, make the playoffs with them. Yeah, John Fox. He also took the Carolina Panthers to the 2005 NFC Championship, which they lost though. But yeah, he made 2 Super Bowl appearances with 2 different teams. Another great head coach that did not win a Super Bowl is Jim Mora Sr. Playoffs? Playoffs? Don't talk about playoffs. Can't even win a game. He was the head coach of the New Orleans Saints and the Indianapolis Colts. He was the coach of Peyton Manning. Their first year was horrible. Then the next year they went to the playoffs. And then after that, it was a disaster. So, yeah, Jim Mora definitely was a great head coach to never win a Super Bowl. Well, he didn't appear in one, so. Yeah. Another great head coach that did not win a Super Bowl is Sid Gilman. Now, Sid Gilman definitely was a great head coach. He was the head coach of the LA Rams and then San Diego Chargers. He actually did win the AFL championship, but he would never appear in a Super Bowl. Now, believe it or not, he had Lance Allworth as a wide receiver. Lance Allworth was a great wide receiver for the San Diego Chargers. Yeah. Another great coach, honorable mention, as I should say, that did not win a Super Bowl is the great Paul Brown. Now, hold up. Now, before I go on with this, Paul Brown was a phenomenal head coach. Now, by the time he started coaching, it wasn't the Super Bowl. It was the pre-Super Bowl, meaning NFL championships. So, yeah, I don't understand. Why don't people include NFL or AFL championships in the league? I mean, I understand, yeah, it's the Super Bowl now, but you still should count NFL and AFL championships because that's still part of the team's history, which I clearly don't understand. But yeah, that's not cool at all. In my personal opinion, like I said, I don't think it's cool at all. But actually, he would win 3 NFL championships and 4 AAFC championships. So that means he got 7 championships. He was the head coach of the Cleveland Browns. That was the Cleveland Browns during the early years when they had Otto Graham and Jim Brown and Marion Motley. And then he would become the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals. I mean, yeah. Can you imagine if he would have won a Super Bowl? I mean, he's definitely a great quarterback. I keep saying quarterback. Definitely a great wide. What is going on? Definitely a head coach that would never appear in a Super Bowl. Yeah. Another great coach to never win a Super Bowl is Lovie Smith. Lovie Smith definitely was a phenomenal head coach for the Chicago Bears. Now, believe it or not, when he first became the coach of the Bears, he said the main thing we got to do is beat the Green Bay Packers, which is the oldest rivalry in the NFL till today. He would go on and coach the Chicago Bears to Super Bowl 41. Now, believe it or not, that team, they had a great defense and they had a great special teams with Devin Hester. Well, their quarterback situation, that's a different story. We'll talk about that another time. But they had Brian Urlacher, Lance Briggs. I mean, that defense was phenomenal. Well, they would lose to the Indianapolis Colts 29-17. And that was the last time that the Chicago Bears and Lovie Smith would ever appear in a Super Bowl. Now, believe it or not, he also became the head coach of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Houston Texans. Well, that didn't last that long. I mean, the way how Tampa Bay fired him, that was crazy, to believe it or not. And to me, my personal opinion, the Bears haven't really been the same since they fired Lovie Smith. Well, they haven't been the same since 1985. So, yeah, I'm just leaving it at that right there, too. But, yeah, he definitely was the head coach of the Houston Texans for 1 year. I mean, he had a losing record, but he still was a great coach. They didn't even give him a chance. The NFL is a business nowadays, so, yeah. Another great head coach that did not win it all is, Jim Caldwell. Now, Jim Caldwell actually won 2 Super Bowls. He won an assistant coach as a Super Bowl with the Indianapolis Colts, and then he would win Super Bowl 47 with the Baltimore Ravens as a quarterbacks coach. Well, he became the head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. His first year, he took them to Super Bowl 44. Well, they were going and lose Super Bowl 44 to the New Orleans Saints, 31-17. I mean, they had a wonderful season. Peyton Manning was actually balling that year. Well, after 3 seasons, the Colts would fire Jim Caldwell, and then later on he would become the head coach of the Detroit Lions. He was their head coach for about 4 seasons. Took them to the playoffs. Well, one playoff game they lost, very controversial. That's another video I might do in another episode. Controversial plays in the NFL. And the way how they fired him was crazy. It was very petty, believe it or not. I don't even think he had a losing record that season. Well, they were going to fire him, and Jim Caldwell definitely was a great NFL coach to never win a Super Bowl. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the end of this episode of the Young Brother of Soul podcast show. Now, before we go off, I just want everybody here to know, make sure y'all hit that subscribe button, leave a comment, hit that notification button, and guess what? There are going to be more episodes of the Young Brother of Soul podcast show. Let me rephrase that. Subscribe, hit that thumbs up, leave a comment, hit that notification button. There we go. That sounds much better. And like I said, make sure y'all tune in for some new episodes of the Young Brother of Soul podcast show. Thank you, and y'all have a good one. And it is still Super Bowl weekend. All right. Thank you.